Good morning. Thank you for coming to play with my mind today. This is the second um, little video on karma that I'm doing. This is Gretchen Vogel. I've been a mystic, practicing medium, channeled, and author for more than 4.5 decades, but now it's time to teach. So I'm awfully glad that you came to see this video. The other morning, I was getting a download when I first woke up, and I don't often do automatic writing, but I didn't want to wake up the dogs because then all heck breaks loose. They sleep in the bed with us. So I quietly reached over and grabbed a pen. And what my guides were talking to me about was the word be cause as it applies to karma. Be cause and effect. And linking the word because to the word blame, blaming what's exterior to us for our own karma. So the way that most of us understand karma is that the boomerang effect of our actions come back to bite us, so to speak. That phrase, karma's a bitch. But we can only perceive our reality in a subjective way. We have no other way of seeing it. And we have to bear in mind that our external reality here in physical seems to be informing us of what reality is. So if you combine those two things, a subjective interpretation along with exterior events or circumstances, then you can begin to see where the be cause and effect applies. And I'm going to give you one little short example of this before we move on. My husband and I were in our truck, and it was during a light snowstorm, and we had slowed down to put the truck in four-wheel drive before we went into our driveway. Well, I don't think that either one of us registered that there was somebody behind us on the road. And this is a state road. There's plenty of room to go around us. But we did not have our blinkers on. And the guy behind us had no idea that that was our driveway. We apparently just stopped in his lane. Anyway, so as he went around us, he did that angry honk, that angry long honk. And of course, my husband and I are really sensitive, so his anger made us angry, and we had a flash of anger. And then almost immediately we realized, no, wait a minute. this wasn't his fault. This was our fault. We didn't have our hazards on. We didn't have our blinkers on. It was snowing. And so instead of thinking that he was a bit of an a-hole, we realized very quickly that this was our be cause and effect. So there's one little cause and effect story. And the way that we keep the effects of our actions out of our control, out of our responsibility, hold them away from us in terms of not being our creation, our karma's not our creation, right? Is because there were external events that dictated to us in a subjective way what became our reality. So I have to give you another very personal example from my life, and I'll try and make this quick. When I was 16 and a half, halfway through my junior year in high school, my parents were finally ready to move to New England. Um, I had attended an all-girls parochial school. Had attended parochial school all my life, and I loved this was really large. This was in Erie, Pennsylvania. It was a very, very large high school. And there were lots of kids. I loved the geeks, but there were cliques, but nobody was mean. There was so many people, you could always find somebody to hang out with or be friends with. And some of the people in that high school I had come up all the way through school with anyway. So we moved to New England. And now I was in a very small town's public high school. Well, I had to wear real clothes, not uniforms. So that was one challenge. The other challenge is that I was pretty traumatized because when we left my childhood home, they sold my horse. I think that was a really traumatic thing. I left friends. I left everything familiar and moved to a completely new environment. Now, in this high school, there were bullies, and I had never been bullied before. So I had no idea how to deal. Thank God that there were some very nice people in this little high school, and particularly the boys were more supportive of me in general. So thank you, Steve. You know who you are. Anyway, now I developed quite a bit of anger to my parents for doing this to me. I developed a huge resentment about this move. And this resentment solidified in me like concrete, this karma that I was creating with my anger and resentment of having no control, being so powerless over this move and never having an opportunity to really grieve, although that wasn't in the vocabulary either. The word trauma did not exist. I swear to God, it did not exist when I was young. Never heard that word. Anyway, so I developed tremendous karma, if you will, with this repetitive patterns. But what this karma did was it kept me away from my parents for most of my adult life. It really skewed the way that I considered them. It really changed our relationship this difficult and troubling time. And as I've been working on dissolving karma, and so that I can tell you about it, I realized that this move had absolutely nothing to do with me. You know, I mm, I don't think my parents really considered, and I don't mean that in a bad way, how damaging this was to me, this uprooting at that particular time in my life. And my parents were good people. They weren't mean. They weren't doing this on purpose, but I took it as personal. And I have an enormous regret. Of course, both of my parents are in the world of spirit, as you can tell, because of my age. I have an enormous regret that I never allowed my karma, the karma that I had created, never allowed them to be any different than the filter that this karma had placed over my heart, over my eyes, over my actions. I couldn't see them through any other lens than this very solidified, ego and pride driven misinterpretation, I think, to a great extent, of the events. I never let them off the hook. I never let them out of that box. And I have huge regrets about that now. So, what we're going to be talking about going forward, I mean, there's so much to talk about, is the be cause and effect. And again, it's logical to think that, say if you have an abusive husband, you're going to build a lot of resentment against him. However, that resentment, those patterns and energy, they harm us. They don't harm the other person. We all want to see karma being returned to the people who we perceive caused us harm. And in some cases, they do. But it's only ourselves that we're harming. It's only our own life that gets skewed, that gets distorted by these patterns in energy. So going forward, we're going to talk about self-responsibility, a big lesson for me. And I want you to know that everything in these videos, my books, my teaching, is from my downloads, is from my channeling, is from my experience with the deceased. I don't borrow from anybody else. So I would love to have comments about a B cause and effect in your own life, if you can think of one. And I think I'm supposed to ask you to like and subscribe. So if you think this series is going to be really interesting or worthwhile to somebody else, please pass it on. Okay. Thank you so much for coming to visit me today. And I hope that I get one up a little bit quicker than I did this time. All right. Blessings to everybody. Thank you.